Let's discuss all the top stories now with Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, who joins us from London. Well, good to have you again this weekend. Let's begin with Heathrow Airport, where the fire incident shut down operations and flights from yesterday. Well, it's begun today, though. It's resumed fully. But as investigations continue to, go on to ascertain what really happened to the electricity at the substation, how does this impact air travel and other, technical issues with flights, especially now that there's been lots of crashes this year?
There are three issues here. The first is resilience. There is, of course, the business of how come one substation can take down the entire airport the size of Heathrow. There are questions being asked about this, hopefully not just in Great Britain, but around the world, because the world is interconnected now. And one of the problems with Heathrow is that it's a hub, and therefore it doesn't affect merely Great Britain, but affects many other nations too. And therefore, there should be a resilience check by airports everywhere to ensure that one substation can't take them under. Secondly, there's the business of security, which is linked to this, because after all, we hope this fire was a normal one, but it follows logically that were it to be done, or were someone to see the opportunity to act illegally to cause such a fire, the consequences were indeed quite spectacular. Heathrow was taken out for an entire day. Number three, it has come back. Heathrow's back. Will take some time to deal with the backlog, and that was the good news. In fact, probably the only good news out of the whole crisis.
We look forward to in this investigation that's already been launched.
Yeah, they're looking at it obviously from the point of view of security, but above all the engineering aspect. One of the interesting questions is that it, so to speak, seized hold of the total substation. If it's yet to be seen the full report, but at present the indications are that it was a fire which was started by itself by some sort of electricity overload, as far as I can tell. The problem is there was a great deal of oil there, 25,000 litres, and that, of course, is the huge problem about all this. I imagine that the substations themselves they'll be asked to redesign so that a fire doesn't take them down entirely, just in one place.
It's a good thing now that the airport is fully operational now to Israel. Palestinians are leaving Beit Lahia in northern Gaza following Israeli army's calls to evacuate. Now, with a pause in phase one, resumption of strikes in Gaza, Hamas's refusal to release more hostages, what can the Arab nations do to persuade Hamas to free hostages so phase two can begin?
Yeah, actually, there's a more complicated than that. What Hamas has been stating is that it agreed to phase one, phase two. Israel doesn't want to phase two, nor does America, which is, of course, the other nation deeply involved here. And that as a result, it has not released the hostages because it should be now starting on phase two talks. Now, here comes the problem. Israel and America have said they must release the hostages. Hamas says we agreed to phase two, and that's what should start now. In that sense, it's a standoff, but it's a very unequal standoff because Israel has the military might to conquer Gaza at any moment and is now talking about taking in bits of Gazan territory. We are not in a very uninteresting place because it could go very badly wrong. We are, please note, not that far away still from the idea of expelling the Gazans from their own territory being still carried out. The last talk was about expelling them to Syria. We hope that, of course, this does not occur, but certainly it is a difficult negotiating time. Israel and America on one side, Gaza on the other. It is to be hoped that Egypt and Qatar, which are the only two mediators left, to be honest, can do something in this situation.
Trump is obviously in support of Israel's actions because, understandably, Americans are among the hostages being held by Hamas, alive or dead. How can the U.S. mediate to ensure freedom for its citizens? Is it just by backing Netanyahu, in this fight?
Yeah, the central problem is that America ceased to be really a mediator, really is just an open ally of Israel. And here comes the key problem. There is no America of the past, like Biden, who, even if he was pro-Israeli, put a fig leaf over it. There is no fig leaf. America's quite clearly on Netanyahu's side, and therefore they're no longer really mediators. The question is, to rephrase your comment, can they pressurize Hamas into surrendering the hostages? And here Hamas is in a real quandary. Let us say they surrender the hostages tomorrow. That's their last negotiating chip gone. There's no phase two, there's nothing. And from that point of view, Hamas, if it releases, is probably doomed. If it doesn't release them, is doomed. There is no easy way of coping with this from Hamas's point of view. And here's where Qatar and Egypt come in. They really are still mediators in the sense they, as far as I can tell, are trying to bridge the gaps between the two sides. And it is to be hoped that some sort of deal can be worked out, perhaps on the lines of, at least if I were a mediator to suggest this, that some more hostages are released in return for some, say, more Palestinians being released by Israel, with the current invasion being halted. But to be quite honest, it hinges really on the discussions that Qatar and Egypt hold with Hamas as to whether they can extract anything like that at all.
From what you've said now, it just appears to me like there were loopholes in this agreement. That certain areas that Israel didn't necessarily look at, especially with regards ensuring that phase one has the whole hostages from both sides released before you move to phase two.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I would rather say that it's the level of support which America is giving to Israel, which has emboldened them to actually move ahead and to simply treat phase two as no longer extant. And therefore, in my opinion, what is happening here is Israel is seizing the opportunity to basically pressurize Hamas, ideally indeed get rid of it, and not simply negotiate. Hamas, for its part, has done nothing to help the situation, not only firing missiles into Israel, which were quite useless militarily, but made a PR point, I suppose, but a mixed one at that, since Israel is using it against them. And therefore, from that point of view, it is not so much loopholes as the situation has changed so much in Israel's favor with regard to the United States that Netanyahu can now go a step further than he ever could have done under Biden.
Quickly on, one of the major or top stories now, Israel saying that it hit dozens of Hezbollah rocket launchers, and that's the command center in southern Lebanon after rockets were fired from there into Israel for the first time since November's ceasefire. What do you make of this recent attack?
The central problem is that in Lebanon, about 20 odd years ago, Hezbollah turned out to be the side that, as far as the locals saw, helped them against the Israelis. The Lebanese government simply was not doing anything. To a certain degree, it didn't even exist. And therefore, Hezbollah has already support there, and that's the very thing that Israel doesn't want. Now, Hezbollah, rather like Hamas and indeed other Muslim organizations, does not want the existence of Israel. And so any ceasefire is never going to be permanent. It's always going to be temporary. And this is what's happened here. Hezbollah fires a few rockets, the IDF retaliates, and in point of fact, going back to where we were again a few months ago. And I imagine that even if a ceasefire were to be declared now, a few months down the line, it will be the same again. Because at the end of the day, we have incompatible goals. One wants the river from the river to the sea, the other is from the sea to the river, so to speak. And it's very hard to square up the difference between them.
Now let's dwell with the U.S. talking about Trump's deportation issue now. Let's talk about that very briefly. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had on March 16 clarified that the president invoked the Alien Enemies Act in response to concerns over the group's criminal activities. Trump has denied that. Is this because of the backlash he's getting? There seems to be two sides to the coin here.
Yeah, there is an element of backlash, but it's not very well coordinated and not very strong. It consists really of some demonstrations. The judges are trying to remember about the law. The fact of the matter is that Trump has seized the initiative almost from day one when he took office and is carrying on doing so. The actual reasons for the migrant expulsions, well, to be quite honest, they're just inventing a step from it, to be exact. The real reason is, of course, that Trump simply wants the migrants out, O-U-T, and will find any excuse to do so. And therefore, he is now going to absolutely do his best to get rid of the migrants. As for why he's denying and non-denying, this is politics, and we've yet to see quite what happens. Personally, on this issue, we have to have clarity by a few more days of seeing exactly what happens. But as we stand, as far as is clear, the migrants are supposed to go as far as Trump is concerned.
Right. Finally, let's talk about Trump. He's revoked the security clearance from Harris and Hillary Clinton and many others. Trump is being petty, or what's the explanation to all of this?
Yeah, it's actually happening in quite a few countries. What's happening, rather, is that he is, well, basically being vindictive. You can't put it any other way than that. He doesn't like the other side. He was taken to court by the other side, and now he's getting his own back. And as you say, it is petty in many ways, but he feels, how can I put it, that they should get a taste of their own medicine, in the sense that he felt that they were getting at him by these trials. In that sense, it's a pity, really, because Trump, amongst all his policies, here and there, it does look as though he has some sort of vision for America, but this is just, I like the term, sheer pettiness and vindictiveness would be my word, rather.
Dr. Marek Laskiewicz for joining us from London. He's a RISE International Affairs Analyst. And now to more of the news. The Sudanese army says it has recaptured the presidential palace in the capital, Khartoum, from the paramilitary rapid support forces after almost 2 years of fighting. Reclaiming the East African country's seat of power marks a major victory for the army, which has been making significant advances against the RSF in the recent months. The Sudanese army celebrated the presidential palace after retaking it.
On Friday, 21st of March 2025, our forces today crowned their successes in Khartoum, where they were able to crush the terrorist remnants of the Daglo militia in the areas of central Khartoum, the Arab market, the buildings of the presidential palace, the symbol of the sovereignty, pride.
Well, there's a call for the Nigerian government to take bold steps, find strong partnerships and target investments to surmount its food security challenges. Speaking at a National Stakeholders Dialogue on Food Security in Abuja, the dialogue themed Achieving Food Security in Nigeria, Bridging the Gap, brought together key actors across the agricultural value chain, including government agencies, private sector leaders, development organizations and civil society representatives, aimed at addressing critical challenges in Nigeria's agricultural sector and driving collaborative solutions for a more food-secure future. The country director, One Acre Fund Nigeria, Adetola Adegbiti, says Nigeria stands at a critical juncture here, or hence the need to take action towards supporting smallholder farmers and tackle the effects of climate change to avoid greater challenges in the future.
But it was quite challenging because many farmers, many smallholder farmers hold their lands in fragmented portions, and then it was quite difficult to provide tractor support because of the nature of land holding. It will be extremely useful if smallholder farmers were able to hold contiguous land, either as cooperatives or in ways that allow them to be able to deploy mechanized farming on their field.
This is looking at the whole spectrum of what is involved in production. So looking at plant health, so looking at integrated pest management to make sure that you have healthy plants that can sustain healthy harvests. Of course, the foundation of where the plant is going is the seed going into the soil. So soil health is also one of our biggest activities that we're doing. We're trying to reduce soil erosion across all of our countries of operation, trying to regulate soil acidity by teaching farmers how to use lime and how to use different cropping practices to make sure that soil organic matter in the soil is boosted. This is going to help us to achieve the yields that we need.
This is a World Bank project, and this World Bank project encompasses both environment, issue of agri, issue of water. So honestly, you see that in local communities, people have been trained people, experts have been sent to these people so as for them to build their own capacity, so as for them to be able to do what it takes.
That's the much we can do on the world. Please keep it here on the Rise News and from the entire team here in Abuja. And Leon, goodbye and thank you for watching.
Autism is a big issue in society. A few years ago, 1 out of 160 children were on the autism spectrum. Today it's about 1 in 30, and according to the WHO, it's estimated in the next decade it will be about 1 in 10 children. And that is why I'm delighted that my bank, Fidelity Bank, we did something for children with special needs.
My child is talking that we're not having conversation, are you creating opportunities for conversation?
The children had lots of fun. My son, for instance, got to use some of the sensory equipment available.
Please try to register. You will definitely be proud that you were here. Thank you, Fidelity Bank. Thank you, Fidelity team, for putting this together.
We are Fidelity. We keep our word.
You're watching Arise.